Welcome in, everybody, to another severe weather analysis. Today we will be covering tomorrow's threat being Tuesday, July 28th. Environment Canada highlights a high risk, as we can see here, mainly for north areas west of Edmonton and northward. They highlight the high risk with a chance of tornadoes, very strong winds, large hail, and heavy rain. And that's in the orange region there, labeled D on the map, and the moderate risk in the yellow will be a smaller chance of storms to develop in the afternoon into the evening hours. But those storms could have severe potential associated with them. But the main threat looks like west of Edmonton and potentially southward later into the evening. We'll jump into the forecast models here and break things down for tomorrow. Before we jump into the models, we should take a look at the wildfire smoke. Currently, we have the rapid refresh forecast for smoke accumulations for tomorrow. Just look at the fields here. We can see near surface smoke. This is for 3 o'clock Central Daylight Time tomorrow. There's some accumulations in central Alberta, but maybe some clearing near the high risk. This would be just a little bit west of Edmonton where that high risk is. If you look at vertically integrated smoke, and you can see throughout the column, it is pretty thick, as we'll have the fires from southern BC and Oregon advecting that smoke in with the jet stream. We can take a look at Environment Canada's output here for their smoke forecast. I don't know what model they use here, but it's in units of micrograms per meters cubed. So I believe, ground level smoke. We can see some accumulation in western Alberta. This is coming into the afternoon, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. And maybe it starts to thin out a bit here as the heating comes out from the sun and you mix that smoke out vertically, as well as some maybe smoke-free air moving in from the southwest. So overall, there will be smoke tomorrow, and it could definitely affect how storms form. But we'll move on to the models next and look at the factors as why tomorrow could be very potent in terms of severe weather. Starting with the Synoptic scale features here. This is 18Z GEFS. We have 500 millibar height tendency, 12-hour height change. The blues indicate height falls, and we have the 500 millibar geopotential height contours. This is Tuesday morning, 6 a.m. Central Daylight Time, and we can see the shortwave feature in the flow that's currently that will be moving in from Vancouver Island in the morning and ejecting as most likely a negatively tilted trough over the high risk area. And overall, just broad height falls throughout most of the day, so pretty much the entire region will be experiencing large-scale synoptic ascent for most of the day. Looking at our other terms that affect vertical motion, we have plotted here 500 to 700 millibar differential positive vorticity advection. Essentially, these contours indicate where we have positive vorticity advection and 850 millibar temperature advection. These two terms contribute to the QG omega equation for vertical motion, and we could see with that short wave and the low-level mass response, we get lots of low-level thermal advection with the Lee cyclone that develops, as well as the positive vorticity advection into this region. So overall, there will be plenty of synoptic ascent to go around for tomorrow, and that could even be a fault if you get too many storms to develop. And here's a look of your synoptic scale fronts. We have low pressure southeast of Grand Prairie, included front running northwest to a low pressure off the west coast of BC, cold front from the west, dry line slash surface trough developing on the lead trough, warm front number 1 arcing southeastward from the surface low, and a secondary warm front northward. In the moderate risk, and just on the north edge of the slight risk. So we'll have kind of a double triple point structure here. One focus being north of Red Deer, and the other northwest of Edmonton here in the high risk area. Early morning thunderstorm activity is expected in northwest Alberta, near the Grand Prairie area, and northward, just on the edge of the low level jet, which can be seen here nicely on the European model. About 20 to 35 knots low level winds here, thermal advection northward, as well as the 700 millibar height falls that will come in, which again the Euro highlights nicely here, as well as those cool 700 millibar temperatures moving in and overspreading some early morning instability. And the global and regional ensemble models pick that up well, as we can see with the GEFS, picking up on some early rain chances in northwest Alberta, north of Grand Prairie, which can be seen over the past few model runs. And as well on the HRDPS, we can see it picks up on precipitation over its model runs. That previous run was 18Z, here's 12Z, and here's the 6Z init of the HRDPS. Overall, in general, we'll likely have early morning thunderstorm activity in northwest Alberta, but with that strong jet streak moving through the flow and the low level jet displacing to the east throughout the day, that thunderstorm activity should remain northward of the high risk, and I wouldn't expect it to impede development further south too much. To break down the tornado environment, we'll go back to the Euro here and just briefly start back at 300 millibars. We can see is this 300 millibar negatively tilted shortwave ejects right over the Rockies here. Euro shows you the Edson area. This will have an incredible amount of lift associated with it, as well as the cold front and convectively enhanced front that moves eastward. We can see it runs all the way into Oregon here and northward. So there would definitely be lots of forcing with the orientation further northwest. I would expect more upscale storms to develop northwest, but we could see supercell development early on in northwest Alberta. We can see the Euro here shows lots of moisture here. This is a 0Z NAM sounding from northwest Alberta at 21Z, 3 p.m. Central Daylight Time. I expect those storms to grow upscale very quickly, as they will likely be developing in the foothills. But we can see very pronounced inverted V profiles with mixing occurring all the way up to 700 millibars there. So very strong downdrafts will develop, and just with the strong forcing, I would expect northwest Alberta to quickly cluster into a line into the early evening, into late evening hours. Again, on the 0Z NAM, we'll take a sounding near the Edmonton area, further southwest. This area would be in a better orientation with your upper level winds compared to the forcing, which will likely be the foothills and the dry line. So you'll likely have more discrete storms for the south. And we can see the profile is pretty weird here. It could be that dry air being infected over top the dry line is showing itself here. But we have more curvature in the photographs here, and we can pick out maybe somewhere where you have more easterly winds. The NAM doesn't really show easterly winds, but you usually do get easterly winds out there. Maybe a little bit of curvature just over the Edmonton area. So your chance for rotating supercells from the NAM appears pretty good over Edmonton. Looking further north of the NAM, we could see it maybe shows some easterlies. This would definitely have an enhanced curvature to it. And you can see the low level destabilization here. More saturated upper levels and lower storm bases could actually materialize a decent tornado threat northwest, which is where the high risk is. And the NAM does show your low level jet to start to kick in once your cold front starts to move eastward. We can take a sounding out ahead of it, just northeast of Edmonton, later into the evening, and lots of curvature there. This would definitely be an environment capable of tornadic supercells if storm mode is favorable. but likely with the strong forcing northwest, you'll see a line of storms north-south oriented, moving very fast to the east. I think is the most likely um, situation to develop, but we could be seeing isolated storms developing near the Red Deer area later. Looking at the RDPS, this is Canada's regional weather model. We can see the dew points here. This model does show them further south and pooling just north of Red Deer here. So we could definitely be seeing isolated development into the evening, late afternoon, early evening, as the jet dives southeastward. You can see the RDPS has a very nice look. You might just get a glancing blow on further south, but the high risk area will definitely be capable of tornadoes. With Alberta and these jet streams, you never know what can happen out there. But I do think the more kind of classic and favorable tornado environment will be near the Red Deer area and westward towards Rocky Mountain House. We can look at the HRDPS to see how it shows dew points. Looking at the HRDPS here, we could see maybe it is a little weaker on dew points along your dry line near Rocky Mountain House and west of Red Deer. It does develop as nice kind of circulation south of Edson here. This corridor here is definitely favorable for cyclogenesis, and we can see it develops that low pressure there near the Edson area. And we have very nice dew points northward or eastward near Edmonton, and anywhere where you pick up east-northeast winds will definitely be a corridor of enhanced tornado potential. Up north, again, just with the shape of the jet and the potential for dew points to be high just because all the rain out there. And, I mean, storm mode might not be favorable. And in Alberta, typically tornadoes, your tornadic supercells are all by themselves, and which is not common for most other tornadic supercells. Normally you want interactions between storms, but the foothills, that's generally not the case. You generally want isolated supercells. So in my opinion, the best tornado environment, at least from the HRDPS, would be just west of Edmonton here, and Environment Canada highlights, I guess it'd be a little further east. Environment Canada highlights something like this for the high risk. But I could see them extending it southeastward, especially because, I mean, the Edmonton area has just had so much rain. Especially today, they had a lot more rain. So I have a feeling we will be seeing that those dew points being much higher than what is even being modeled by the HRDPS. We can take a look at the other high resolution models and see what they show for dew points. Here's the WRF ARW M1 model. This is a part of two models. I believe that's produced by the National Weather Service. One of the few models that actually go north enough to capture much of the Canadian prairies, and we can see it's pretty fair on dew points. It does have quite a different structure in terms of where it develops the low pressure. This doesn't really seem right, given that we saw on the Euro the Lee cyclone developing near Grand Prairie. But we will likely be seeing a second area of cyclogenesis west of Rocky Mountain House, in between Edson and Rocky Mountain House. We will likely be seeing secondary cyclogenesis as that strong wind moves over the mountains. And we can look at the ARW2, which generally is higher in dew points, and again has it kind of a different shape than I would expect for your surface features. I guess we can just take a quick sounding near the Red Deer area. Pretty curved photographs, lots of venting, pretty decent dew points there, pretty mixed as well. to look further north where it's showing better dew points. Yeah, pretty high 3 capes, lots of shear out there, lower LCLs. So honestly, to say which is the better tornado environment, you might just have to go with the jet, just because those tend to get things done in Alberta, but in a more classical sense, and equally, if not better, tornado environment will exist further west, southwest of Edmonton later. Finally, moving on to precipitation output from the models, we'll go with what we really have out here, which is just the HRDPS and the 2 ARW models. Scroll this forward, see storms developing in the foothills by around 2 o'clock. I would expect first northwestward, where you have the destabilization. Then these quickly become a mess east of Grand Prairie, which is what I would expect with those inverted V profiles. But they could hit that higher ground moisture here, and with that low level jet that develops, you'll likely be seeing a very strong complex moving eastward overnight. That could even have QLCS spin-ups if the dew points are high enough and the low of the jet is strong enough. And we can see your more powerful supercells that would likely be your tornado producers, or at least have tornado potential, would fire into your Edson and track just northwest of Edmonton there. This is just on the southeastern edge of the high risk. But this area is looking pretty favorable for discrete supercells. The HRDPS doesn't show anything further southwest. And again, this lower probability, not as certain if you'll get moisture down there. But definitely your belt is discrete supercells will exist out here. Looking at the 12Z HRDPS, it shows much of the same here. It has this very strong complex moving eastward from Grand Prairie, northward to Fort McMurray, and then kind of dying as it loses instability and access to low level moisture. But again, it picks up on these supercells, firing near Edson. We take a look at the 6Z, and again, much of the same here. So the high risk area definitely covers these, the potential for these discrete supercells southeastward. We'll take a look at the other 2 convective models and at their output. Here's a look at the WRF ARW M1 model, and I have composite reflectivity and 0 to 3 kilometer updraft helicity. So where the model thinks that you have rotating updrafts, and we can see this model actually goes pretty early near the Nord Egg area north of Rocky Mountain House, as these supercells tracking right into the northwest side of Edmonton. And it's interesting that's a bit later northwestward. It probably mixes out a bit northwest. Yeah, it really mixes out northwestward. We'll see if that happens. It definitely could happen. And if that does, any clusters, that would prevent any clusters from interacting with your isolated supercells eastward. But I believe the other version of this model is higher on moisture, so you'll likely be seeing more storms northward on this model, and we get potential for supercells all the way pretty far north there. But yeah, overall it could be pretty hairy for the Edmonton area. I could see them possibly upgrading to an extreme risk, possibly centered just west of Edmonton, then expanding that high risk maybe just a bit southeastward and covering Edmonton, just because the potential is there. You likely will get northeasterly winds in this pocket here, in between Whitecourt and Red Deer, just because cyclogenesis is favored out here with a secondary 500 millibar shortwave moving over. You'll likely get northeasterlies in response at the surface, and you would have enhanced shear, and things could get pretty hairy. The WRF ARW does show probably the worst case scenario for Edmonton, where you have multiple discrete isolated supercells moving into that area. Definitely do not want that to happen, as Edmonton is currently flooded. They don't need more rain, and they certainly do not need a tornado outbreak. You can look at the FV3 real quick. I don't think it will cover as far north, but if it picks up on further south here in red here, doesn't look like it. So yeah, I could definitely see them expanding that threat southeastward throughout the day, or in the morning outlook, and possibly going with an extreme risk. But other factors such as smoke and early morning moisture content will kind of tell that story if they are expecting a substantial tornado event to occur. And to end off with probabilistic output here, here's the 18Z GEFS as TORP, basically a probabilistic output, trying to mimic the Storm Prediction Center style outlooks. This is based off of the GEFS, the model that we showed height falls with earlier. Just basically an ensemble model, an average of all the regional and global models kind of combined. And we can see the 18Z highlights tornado potential pretty much starting from 3 o'clock into the 6 o'clock period pretty early. And I do think the potential for early storm development will exist, just given the scale of forcing and those cooler 700 millibar temperatures moving in, and all the ground moisture, which this model isn't going to pick up on, is your ground moisture, which is why I think they could extend the threat southeastward, and why the GEFS is probably underdoing the tornado probabilities, just because these models are not great for the foothills and capturing the dynamics that occur out there. But it is worth to note the 18Z has a slight downtrend in tornado probabilities from the 12Z. We could see it had a 5% bullseye, pretty much just maybe south of Edmonton, if not in Edmonton itself, as well as SIG hail potential and strong wind. I don't really see a downtrend in terms of the dynamics at play. Maybe some models have gone with that dry line being too strong and mixing out too much southwards. But we could see the tornado extent in terms of probabilities is pretty much identical between the two. It's kind of going back and forth here. Pretty much identical, so I don't really think much has changed in terms of that. It picks up on early thunderstorm probabilities northwestward, which is what I would expect. Doesn't pick up on significant wind, but I do think as you cluster later, get clusters later, especially further north of Edmonton, in between Edmonton and Fort McMurray, will likely be your pocket of damaging winds. Though Edmonton will be in, the potential will exist for, again, a very another powerful windstorm with torrential rain if things fire a bit earlier and cluster earlier on. So all hazards will be possible in the Edmonton area later into the afternoon. And of course hail, we didn't really touch on that. Hail will be, with any discrete storms that form first, hail will be a big issue. Northwestward, it's hard to say with storms that mix out mix out a lot. Sometimes storms that mix out can produce no hail, and sometimes they can produce big hail. So I would say your hail probabilities, it does show SIG hail on your foothill storms for Edmonton. So, and I would believe that just how history goes for the foothills and hail. So those discrete cells, as they get going, could be real hail producers out there, and could cause issues. But overall, very dynamic environment. Probably the best trough injection we've seen all year. Um, I definitely think it's an extreme risk worthy environment. There are a couple fail modes again, the potential for smoke being further south over your red deer target, um, as well as storms clustering too much in northwest Alberta. But overall, it will be a very interesting day, and a day where Edmontonians will need to be watching the sky for sure, because again, the potential, if all things kind of go wrong tomorrow or right, whatever view you have, if you're a storm chaser, you want things to go right in terms of weather. Um, if things kind of shape up kind of perfect, we could be seeing tornado outbreak potential. Um, though it's a bit too early to say that, because, I mean, it's just really hard to say. You'll really know once how the morning kind of satellite and observations look, if things will kind of trend towards that. Early morning storms could be a factor, though I think they will stay kind of out of the high risk area. So yeah, be a very interesting day tomorrow. Um, Honestly, it might be looking like the best setup all year, better than the June 6th and 7th high risks, just because you won't be battling a cap. Um, the models do show weird mixing, but again, they don't really resolve the draw line very well. So, yeah, I would say the potential does exist for potentially strong tornadoes tomorrow, as we have seen Alberta plus a jet stream go crazy before, and it will always kind of go crazy out there. So yeah, that will conclude this video. I did change the style up a bit. The video is still kind of long, but I did kind of edit things and hopefully make things more concise. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.